Welcome back to the channel. We're back on our Final Fantasy Commander deck profile with Kefka, Dancing Man. For 7 mana, you get a 6/6 that's indestructible during your turn. And during each of your end steps, you get to exile a card at random from each player's graveyard to cast it without paying its mana cost. And if you don't end up casting a spell, those opponents lose life equal to the mana values. So, we have plenty of ways to make sure that we can load up our opponent's graveyards with all the cards that they want in the graveyard. Other ways to make sure that we're getting this ability off more than once so that we could, we don't necessarily have to just cast one thing from their graveyard. We can make sure that we're doing the randomness multiple times to get that card out of their graveyard that we actually want rather than, their Dark Ritual that we can't really do much at the end phase at that point. But yeah, that's the general overview of the deck. We have ways to mill our opponent, make them discard stuff, make them draw more cards so they'll have to discard at their end phase potentially. But yeah, like I said, let's get into it card by card. We're starting off with an Arcane Signet. Tap for 1 mana that you need essentially for this deck because you're in Commander. Blitzball. Add 1 mana of any color, sacrifice it. This artifact deals 2 damage. Sorry, you draw 2 cards. Activate only if an opponent was dealt combat damage by a legendary creature you control this turn. We're not really going to deal too much combat damage with Kefka. We do have some other legendary creatures that could deal some combat damage. We could also steal our opponent's legendary creatures if they let them get put into the graveyard. So just that little bit of draw power is nice. Ghost Vacuum, exile a target card from a graveyard. If there's a card in our opponent's graveyard we definitely don't want to cast, or we don't want them to cast, we could just exile from the graveyard right away. And then eventually we can pay 6 mana into it. Sacrifice Ghost Vacuum, put each creature card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each item is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types, so you don't get the stats, but if they do have an enter the battlefield ability deck, you got a lot of abilities yourself now. Mesmeric Orb, whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. So, during each of your opponent's upkeep, they're going to have to mill for all the lands they tapped, all the mana dorks they tapped, all the creatures they swung in with, making it so they'll have plenty of cards that you want to cast out of the graveyard, because everyone always mills the cards that they want. Mind Stone, just tap for a little bit of mana, sacrifice eventually to draw a card if you need to. Mind Crank, whenever an opponent loses life, because once again, Kefka doesn't deal damage, he just makes your opponents lose life. So those are 2 distinct things in terms of the game. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player mills that many cards. So say if we don't cast their spell and they had a 6-mana thing, they're milling 6 so that they have something that we actually want next time. And 5 other things that we probably don't want. But that's the downside you get of random. I do like the aspect of this deck. I just don't tend to like random in this deck. Magic. Strionic Resonator, 2 mana. 2 mana to tap it as well. Copy Kefka's ability during each of your end phases. You're going to get 2 cards out of each of our opponent's graveyard instead of just the 1. Talisman of Indulgence, a little bit of extra mana, because we're going to need it. Kefka costs 7 to cast. Unlicensed Hearse, exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard. So, we can just exile 1 because it's up to 2. But still, let's get the stuff that we don't want out of the graveyard. Let's get rid of their lands that they put in the graveyard. We don't want an Evolving Wilds. We don't need it. And then Wondrous Crucible. Also second ability. I forgot that's the thing. Power and toughness are equal to the number of cards exiled with it. Cool. So you at least have a 2/2 with Crew 2. Wondrous Crucible, 7 mana. Permanents you control have War 2, making it hard to destroy Kefka during our opponent's turns. And at the beginning of your end step, mill 2 cards, then exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. We're going to also be putting plenty of cards into our graveyard. So let's get that ability off so we get our spells for free as well. We don't just need our opponent's stuff. Yep. For some reason I want to redraw Kefka's ability again in my head, but I realized I was doing it in my head. It does say each opponent, doesn't say each player. Next up, we have Brain Stealer Dragon for 7 mana. You get 6/6 to flying. At the beginning of end step, exile a top card of each opponent's library. You may play those cards as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as those mana any color. And whenever a non-land permanent an opponent owns enters the battlefield under your control, they lose life equal to its mana value. So it no longer matters if we're casting in or not with Kefka's ability. They're losing the mana anyway. Plus the life that they're losing from the ones that we do pay mana for. We do have other ways to steal our opponent's stuff as well. and just get other stuff that we want out of the graveyard. We'll get into those a little bit later. Itali Primal Storm. Exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from among them without paying their mana cost. Once again, another way to get our opponent's stuff for free. Another way to get our stuff for free while we're at it. Go-Go, Mysterious Mine. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you have Go-Go become a copy of another target creature you control, except it's just Go-Go, and gains haste until end of turn. Yeah. And, wait. End of turn and attack this turn if able. Okay, so must attack. But yeah, still, becoming our opponent's most powerful thing, becoming an Itali, becoming a Kefka, really useful there. Ganti, Night Minister. Whenever your player casts a spell they don't own, aka all the spells that are being casted from our opponent's graveyard, that player creates a treasure token. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one or more of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, man of any type, to cast that spell as well. Okay, another way to play the deft aspect of this deck. Harmonic Prodigy makes it so our wizard and shaman abilities happen more than once. So far that's just Kefka, but the fact that you're getting the 2 spells for free, I think is worth just a little bit of 2 mana in here. Lock, Treasure Hunter, Human Rogue. Lock can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. He's a 2/3. When Lock attacks, each player mills a card. If a land card is milled away, get a treasure token. So in turn, you may cast a spell from among those cards. So, another way to steal our opponent's stuff, another way to get some more mana on the battlefield. Magus of the Wheel, 3 mana for a 3/3. But you can pay 2 mana to tap and sacrifice it. Each player discards their hand and draws 7. You basically have a Wheel of Fortune without paying the $500, but it is on a creature and it costs 5 mana, is the only thing there. But sometimes our opponent has the stuff that they want in their hand. Let's get it out of their hand. But we're being the nice guy. We're letting them draw 7 while we're at it. And then we're punishing them for it. Razorkin Needlehead has first strike during your turn. Whenever an opponent draws a card, deals 1 damage to them. So those 7 cards they just drew, we're dealing 7 damage to them for it. That's the only thing with this deck is, like, I feel like I kind of went in just a couple directions all at once with this deck, but I do think it still works overall. Roaming Drone, choose the creature type. Its abilities happen twice, aka make sure Kefka can happen twice. Harmonic Prodigy will also make it happen twice, so is it double? Yep, happens an additional time. So yeah, we're having it happen 3 times total, and 3 cards out of each opponent's graveyard, which, I mean, that's 9 cards on the battlefield. Or, 3 cards worth of damage to each player, depending on what we exile. Scrawling Crawler, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. We're helping them out, we're letting them draw cards again, so they'll eventually have to discard them. And then whenever an opponent draws a card, deal 1 damage to that player. Same as Razorkin Needlehead, we have quite a few wheels in this deck, so we're going to make sure our opponents keep discarding their hands so that they keep drawing cards. Sepulchral Primordial. Intimidate. Whenever Primordial enters the battlefield for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Once again, another way to get stuff out of the graveyard, this time less random, which is really nice there. Shoulder the Apocalypse. Once again, like I said, we have plenty of wheels, so we have plenty of ways to punish our opponents for drawing cards. I mean, sure, we made them do it, but they have to. Yes, they did. Solemn Simulacrum. When it comes into the battlefield, get a land. We need some mana fixing in this deck, just. And when this creature gets removed, draw a card. It's just a little bit of mana fixing and a little bit of draw power. Sycorax Commander. First strike, haste. Whenever Sycorax enters the battlefield, each opponent faces a villainous choice. The opponent discards all cards in their hand and draws that many cards, -1, or deals damage to a player equal to the number of cards in their hand. Are they going to take the 3 damage, or are they going to take the 6 damage from children? It's their choice. It'd be 3 damage or 4 damage, because draw that many -1. Thieving Amalgam. At the beginning of each upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library, making so they can get their land drops, because you're always going to make sure you hit their lands off the top. And whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its controller loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Really helpful there, because we're going to be casting all of our opponent's stuff, and that's how that benefits. Animate Dead, enchant creature in the graveyard, basically you revive it, and I think it gets -1, -0. But still, we get the most powerful thing out of our opponent's deck with an enter battlefield ability, with a 1 attacks ability. It's super helpful for us there. Liliana's Crest. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Once again, we're making our opponent discard their whole hand. If this was like turn 3 and all they're getting is land drops, sorry, it's turn 4, and all they're getting is land drops, we just dealt 14 damage to them, turn 3. And then they'll be spiteful towards us, and that's why we cast Spiteful Visions, where at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Whenever a player draws a card, deal 1 damage to that player. So, with the 7 cards they're drawing, they're discard 7, deal 14, draw 7 more. That's 21 damage already. Nice little combo there. Waste not. Whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 zombie. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black mana. Whenever an opponent discards a non-creature spell, draw a card. A little bit of benefit off of us making them wheel out a little bit there. Well, may as well call them Joey, with how many random effects and discarding. No, not discarding. I forgot what it was. Oh, random effects. Yeah. AS Warp. And wheels we have. Sorry, I blanked there for a second. Chaos Warp. Our opponent has to shuffle their best card back into their deck and get the even better card out of their deck. So we could, feel like we did something. Calling a Dust. Exile a card from a graveyard, aka get the one that we don't want out of here. If it's a creature card, you gain 3 life. Otherwise, you draw a card. And you can exile 5 other cards from your graveyard to have this cast this again. Once again, we just like to remove our opponent's stuff in the graveyard so we have less randomness involved. Dark Ritual, 3 mana, we're in black, we may as well. Espers of Magicite. Exile each opponent's graveyard. When you do, choose up to 1 target creature card exile display. Create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an artifact, and loses all other types. Same as Kefka's ability, except it's not random. We just get whichever card we want out of the graveyard for each opponent. And is it count as cast? No, create a token copy, so it's not counting as a cast abilities there. Laughing Mad, it has Kefka in the art. How can we not? Additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card, and draw 2 cards. It's 3 mana. I mean, there's plenty of cards that do this for 2 mana, but they don't have Kefka on the art. And this also has Flashback, so that when we eventually mill this, we still cast it. Singing Study, draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield, or its commander in its command zone. So you basically draw 7, lose 7 life, but it's worth for 5 mana. Times with Mayhem, choose target instant sorcery. Choose target instant sorcery spell. Each opponent may copy that spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy they control. You copy the spell once plus an additional time for each opponent who copied the spell. This way, you may choose new targets for the copies you control. So, basically what this says is that, say if you cast Laughing Mad, or let's say you cast Chaos Warp, your opponents get to choose, do I want to copy that? If, let's say if 2 people say yes, they get to cast it, and you basically get to shuffle 2 more things into someone's deck, and then you get to do it 2 more times because you get to copy it as well. So you basically got 5 Chaos Warps off of 1 Chaos Warp with this. Untimely Malfunction. Destroy target artifact, or you get to destroy 5 artifacts. Choose target spell or ability with single target. Change target spell or ability with single target. 1 or 2 creatures can't block this turn. Just a little bit of source removal. It's going to be the first ability. I tend to forget it has the other abilities, but they are nice too. Withering Torment. Destroy target creature or enchantment. Lose 2 life. A little bit of removal there. It's always nice. And then our sorceries. We have Awaken the Erstwhile. Each player discards all cards in their hand, and then create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. We have so many ways to benefit off of having cards in our opponent's graveyard. Let's get the ones they wanted in their hand out of their hand. And, also benefit off that discard. Blasphemous Act is a nice little board wipe, dealing 13 damage to each creature. Except your Kefka gets to survive because he is indestructible during your turn. Breach the Multiverse. Each player mills 10. Then you get a creature card from each player's graveyard onto the battlefield. once again, we like putting stuff into our opponent's graveyard, so mill is nice. We like getting stuff out of our opponent's graveyard, so that getting that creature spell is nice as well. Burning Inquiry, 1 mana. Each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Once again, everyone tends to discard their best cards, so let's get those out of their graveyard, and let's benefit out that discard while we're at it. Dark Deal, each player discards all cards in their hand, then draws that many cards -1. Like I said, same as the wheel effects that we were talking about earlier. All the benefits we have off of them discarding, all the benefits we have off of them drawing cards, dealing the damage there, really nice. Dread Summon, each player mills X cards. For each creature card put into a graveyard this way, create a 2/2 zombie token. Once again, we want more stuff in our opponent's graveyard, so we have more stuff to get out of there with Kefka. So let's get zombies off of them by, let's pay 5. Because we already have Kefka on the battlefield, for example. That's 5 zombies per person. Feed a Swarm, a little removal spell for 2 mana there. Imposing Grandeur, each player may discard their hand and draw cards equal to the greatest mana value of a commander they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So if they're also playing, say you're having Kefka versus Kefka versus Kefka versus Kefka versus Gishath, those are all 7 mana commanders. So everyone could decide, do I want to discard one and draw 7? Do you have 2 things on your battlefield that deal a damage every time I draw a card? I probably don't want to now. Just as well, add red mana for each card in the opponent's hand. We just let them draw 7 cards. That's 7 mana we got off that. Wow. And you also get to exile top 2 of your deck and cast them with that red mana. Kovard's Fury. Each player chooses friend or foe. Each friend discards all cards in their hand and draws that many cards +1. It's not -1 this time around. And then each foe, deals damage to each foe equal to the number of cards in their hand. So, depends what they want to do. Do they want to take the damage and less benefit off of them discarding cards, or do they just want to take the damage? Last one standing, choose a creature at random, then destroy the rest. I mean, that could just be fun. I don't like random typically, but we're in a Kefka deck. We may as well just keep doing random shit. Midgar, City of Miko. You may sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2. It's also a land, so nice little ability there. Get our creature that we could reanimate into our graveyard, for example. Nibelheim of Flame, choose target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. Its spell is cast in a graveyard. Discard your hand, draw 4 cards. Discard 1, draw 4. Nice. Deal 6 damage to each opponent with Kefka on the board. Super nice. Reanimate, put our creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Make our opponent's best creature be ours now. Once again, except we get to choose this time around. Reforge the Soul, 5 mana. Each player discards their hand, then draw 7. Another wheel effect. A little bit overcasted, but it does have the miracle cost, so that we can cast it for 2. If this is the first spell we drew, each turn. Rejoin the fight, mill 3 cards. Then starting with the next opponent in turn order, each opponent chooses a creature card in your graveyard that has been chosen. Return each card chosen this way to the battlefield under your control. So, we only leave the best stuff in our graveyard to be reanimated, because otherwise they'll just choose, what's our worst creature card? Solemn Simulacrum for every one of them. I mean, that's still a lot of mana, so it'll be kind of nice. Well, and then you have to choose a different one. But yeah, still, like I said, we want to be in control of what we're getting. So let's use some of our ways that banish cards out of our graveyard to choose that. One of our big game enders that basically is 9 mana, says win the game. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, and then wait until next turn when your opponent board wipes you. But yeah, unfortunately, that tends to be what happens. But yeah, basically reanimate all of your stuff, along all of your opponent's stuff, all the stuff that you were milling, all the stuff that you're having them discard. It's all under your control now. Snort. Each player may discard their hand and draw 5 cards. Deals 5 damage to each opponent who discarded their hand this way. They're probably not going to want to discard their hand. It is a May ability, but if they're low on hand, it could be worth it. And it also depends what else we have. Toxic Deluge, basically a board wipe, depending on how much life we pay. Virtue of Persistence, 3 mana. Nope, that's 7 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Once again, let's get the best stuff out of our opponent's graveyards. And target creature gets -3/-3 until end turn. You gain 2 life. Nice little life gain there while we're at it, along with a little removal. Visions of Dread. 3 mana, target opponent puts a creature card of their choice from their graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. They do get to choose, so maybe you'll just get a Birds of Paradise, but maybe you'll get their Gishath, for example. You don't tend not to want Gishath in this deck. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest mana value of commanders you own or in the command zone, aka 7. So you can cast this for 4 mana for its flashback cost. Wheel of Fate. Suspend for 4, so you have to wait 4 turns before you get it. But each player discards their hand and draws 7 eventually. So that's still a nice little ability there, giving us a little bit of time to get our other stuff onto the battlefield, and hopefully we don't, draw what we wanted in the meantime. And Wheel of Misfortune. Each player secretly chooses the number 0 or greater. Then all players reveal those numbers simultaneously and determine the highest and lowest number revealed. This way, when Wheel of Misfortune deals damage equal to the highest number to each player who chose that number, aka just the person who chose the number, each player who didn't choose the lowest number discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So if you like your hand, just keep it. If you don't, choose 0. You're not going to lose with 0. You're going to at least tie. And then we have Alcatraz, who benefits off of our opponent's discarding cards. Fail to Profane, which is a removal spell, and I think that's it. But thanks so much for tuning into the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll like, comment, subscribe so you can stay tuned for future videos. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching.